Welcome back to day 3. How are our feet doing? If anyone's got a good set of feet they'd like to swap with mine, please come and see me after this, because I've got a very worn out set that really need a rest. Absolutely superb to be here on day 3, and delighted that we've saved one of the best for last, quite honestly, that we get now to talk about skills and some of the skills opportunities that we have associated with the decommissioning industry going forwards. And an absolute highlight for us is to have Mr. Stephen Dawson join us to both address everybody that's here and also to formally release, I'm never sure what the actual term is for this, but anyway, to release the report for us. So, Mr. Stephen Dawson, Minister assisting the Minister for State and Industry Development, Jobs and Trade. I'd like to invite you please to come up and speak to us all. Thank you.
Thanks, Francis, and good morning, everybody. I might start by saying Nala Kadich, Wajok Nyunga Murt Kayan Kadak Nijabuja. Can I acknowledge that we're on the land of the Wajok people of the Noongar Nation today? Pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I will acknowledge Linda Dawson, who's just snuck off, the Deputy Director General of the Department of Jobs, Tourism, Science Innovation, and of course Francis Norman and the team at CODA. Thank you for all your hard work, and it is my pleasure to be here to speak to you today. And certainly I would just want to highlight our government's commitment to developing a globally competitive energy industry, and that includes extensive opportunities for project decommissioning in this state. These activities and the supply chains really do offer a wealth of local, but also of regional and national benefits and opportunities. Now, AOG Energy, yet again, has proven to be a wonderful and invigorating conference, showcasing the range of opportunities, along with the challenges that the energy industry faces. And the focus on industry supply, local capability, energy transition, hydrogen, subsea, and innovation does highlight the numerous benefits for Western Australia's economy and our workforce. Now, speaking of the benefits, decommissioning is an industry that can unlock significant potential for Western Australia. This can include the development of essential infrastructure such as ports and recycling hubs, through the creation of many job opportunities and of course the emergence of innovative technologies. As Western Australia continues to be a global player in the energy landscape, the concentrated volume of decommissioning work in our state allows for the opportunity to build capabilities and capacity to cement us as a global leader. Now, Western Australia possesses the most skilled and unique workforce in the world, and it's equally important that this workforce is transitioned to meet the demands of future industries in a lower emissions world or economy. And it is imperative that we have a robust understanding of the makeup of our current workforce to ensure that we can shape the requirements of our future workforce. As WA continues to be a major player in the energy landscape and local jobs remain a key priority for our government, I want to highlight some key success factors in LNG decommissioning in Western Australia and how we aim to support our future workforce. And one of these is the CODA Skills Review, which I'm very proud to launch today. But before I dive deeper into the Skills Review, I'd first just like to touch on the LNG Jobs Task Force. And this task force is a collaboration between government, industry and unions working to establish Western Australia as an energy hub for the Asia-Pacific region. It was convened by the former Premier and is now a critical component to assist WA to reach its net zero targets. It's chaired by Premier Cook himself now, and the task force features representation from the senior leadership of key stakeholders, including the CEOs or managing directors of Chevron, Shell, Woodside, Impex and Santos. And in a post-Paris Agreement world, Western Australia stands at the crossroads as its energy sector shifts towards reducing carbon emissions in line with our 2050 net zero goals, along with WA-based LNG producers who are increasingly focused on decreasing their emissions. It's close to 50 years since first domestic gas was delivered into WA, and some offshore and onshore gas infrastructure is reaching its end of life. And the decommissioning of ageing oil and gas facilities presents exciting, in my book, opportunities for repurposing and recycling of materials. And as a former Environment Minister, it's the recycling stuff that I'm particularly interested in. I'm very pleased that it's about to happen in this sector. And in fact, these forces for change create a dynamic environment for WA to change the future of gas in our state, positioning our state as a global leader in the production of lower carbon LNG, but also decommissioning end-of-life infrastructure. And as a result of the transformative energy landscape, the task force recently updated its priority areas. And one of these major changes is establishing a decommissioning working group. And the task force has worked closely with CODA as a key contributor and certainly looks forward to continuing this relationship, especially complementing the new decommissioning working group, which will aim to have a strong focus on decommissioning skills and the regulatory landscape here in Western Australia and indeed in the country. So in recognition of the potential impact that a strong decommissioning sector will have on our economy, our government, in partnership with CODA, has agreed on a $5 million financial assistance agreement to develop the state's offshore oil and gas decommissioning industry. And through this agreement, our aim is clear: to empower CODA in delivering annual programs that will create further job opportunities in this state for the local workforce and deliver new opportunities for service and also for technology companies. It will support the building of a locally competitive domestic decommissioning industry that can make a significant impact, not just locally in Western Australia, but we hope across the Asia-Pacific region more broadly. And it will also improve safety, efficiency and environmental outcomes while driving down decommissioning costs through cross-industry collaboration and planning and implementation of cutting-edge technology. So I'm very impressed with the work that CODA is progressing, not just to benefit decommissioning in Western Australia, but work that will benefit national decommissioning plans. And so just recently I had the pleasure of announcing CODA's Western Australian Decommissioning Hub location study at the Energy Club dinner last month. And the Hub study summarises the evaluation of potential sites on our coast, our long coastline, but also the suitability of their use as decommissioning receival and dismantling yards for offshore and gas assets. And further to this, so it's a great pleasure that today I get to announce the launch of CODA's Skills Review for the Australian Oil and Gas Decommissioning Industry Report. And both these studies really are practical examples of the fostered collaboration between government and industry, being a key deliverable of CODA's agreement and a major project of the LNG Jobs Task Force. The Skills Review was produced by Deloitte, thanks Kristy, and as a major project of the LNG Jobs Task Force, former Education and Operations Working Group. And the review aims to provide and develop a blueprint for current and future skills and capabilities that really will become integral to the WA and the Australian decommissioning industry. The report provides findings on how to develop a domestic decommissioning workforce, make sure they're well equipped to meet anticipated future demand, and it also includes an assessment of the current Australian workforce, identifying existing skills across relevant industry sectors and highlighting skills gaps wherever they exist. And so the study identified 4 key themes as key considerations for future engagement. First, it talks about the strength of our oil and gas industry, and there's a strong commitment to learn and face the future with an open mind. The industry is eager to innovate and to leverage its rich tapestry of skills and resources to not just evolve, but to lead globally. Secondly, it states the decommissioning industry is an industry poised for growth, with increased demand projected due to a large number of facilities approaching end of life over the next few decades. And the review also highlights the anticipated surge in decommissioning activities that will likely stretch our workforce capability. And so developing these skills is a key priority for the Cook government. And lastly, there's a willingness to meaningfully connect and to collaborate the vast complexities associated with decommissioning work. And this calls for a new area of cooperative but also strategic planning. And the report concludes with a high-level roadmap indicating how to advance the Australian decommissioning industry over the next 5 years, with each opportunity graded according to priority. So I think this provides a solid outlook of anticipated endeavours and a foundation that they can be based upon. And the study is now publicly available on CODA's website, and I certainly strongly encourage everyone to be informed of the skills requirement, of the identified capabilities, as well as the proposed solutions and strategies that are needed to bridge the identified gaps. Our government clearly recognises not only the necessity of decommissioning, but also the ample opportunities a prosperous decommissioning industry presents for Western Australia and this region more broadly. It will foster a skilled local workforce, it'll strengthen supply chains, and will flow through to beneficial research and development and our ESG credentials, and something that, having been to the States over the past week, I know it's on the minds of our, certainly our friends over there, but certainly as we work through AUKUS and the opportunities that may bring, ESG really is something that we all have to be alive to, prepared for, and indeed we should be selling as a major thing that we do in Western Australia. We do it well. So to ensure safe and efficient decommissioning works, as well as enhancing current and future workforce capability, the sector needs to unite as one. So whether it's state, territory or federal governments, whether it's industry bodies, research organisations, our universities, indeed to our unions and other organisations, the resolution of common challenges, I think, is a shared responsibility, and it requires a concerted effort by us all. And so our Cook State Government is fully committed to decommissioning end-of-life infrastructure, LNG infrastructure, in accordance with its lower emissions priorities. And the study provides an excellent presentation of the opportunities and the challenges that exist within our current environment so that we can forge the workforce of tomorrow and beyond. So I do encourage everyone here at the conference to use this conference as an opportunity to connect with others in the industry, to accelerate key partnerships and collaborate, but also check this report out because it does have some solutions for the future. Thanks very much for having me. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister, for that. I've got to say, having now worked with you on the launches of both of our reports, the presentation that you give and the description you give, it's almost like, well, we don't really need to talk any further about it. It's so comprehensive. But thank you again so much for all of your support, for all the work that we're doing. So we thought rather than a death by PowerPoint now, we would take a different sort of tack with how we're going to talk about the report. So I'd like to invite the three ladies in the front here to join me in the comfy seats up at the front. From right to left, we have Kristy Delaney, who is a partner in the Workforce Transmission. Let me try that one again. The Workforce Transformation business with Deloitte. We have Samara Groves, who is one of our team and who actually led all of the work working with Deloitte and working with industry to develop this report. And then sitting closest to me is Ashani Seneviratne, who is a director also from Deloitte, who was also instrumental in the development of the report. So before I slide around and get into a seat here, if I can start off with a question to you, Samara, please. Why did we do this? You know, what led to us undertaking this study and getting to where we are now, please?
Thanks, Francis. So like everything that we do at CODA, we obviously consult widely and engage with our stakeholders and industry to see where the priority areas are. And unsurprisingly, I guess, because skills and workforce and talent is such an important part to any industry, but this really came through as a priority area that we had to look at. So decommissioning being in its nascent stage in Australia, there isn't an established workforce. Don't get me wrong, there's work underway and there's lots of clever and skilled people working in decommissioning roles at the moment, but we don't have a well-established workforce because we have most of the works coming up over the next 10 years, and that's when we'll have the peak as well. So we saw the need that there needed to be a strategy around this. We needed to think more long-term about how we could develop the workforce for this industry. And key to that was this first phase of actually doing a skills review, so we could understand the current state of play and also the future skill requirements, and then look at where the gaps are. So we worked with Deloitte on that and they've done an incredible job. There were a few key things that they did. So the first one was to look at the different decommissioning activities, and that was against a standardised work breakdown structure, and against each of those activities associating the skills and capabilities with them. We then wanted to look at the market, so what was already out there, and this was something from the outset that we'd identified as very important, that we're not starting from zero or from scratch here. There's a lot of skills that already exist within the oil and gas decommissioning industry and adjacent industries as well. So what do those people need if they are interested in transferring into a decommissioning role? What upskilling or training will be required there? So understanding what's already in the market, And then lastly, understanding where the gaps are as well, so we can start thinking about some solutions, a way forward to bridge some of those gaps. And really the overall objective was to start to understand how we can build a capable workforce to be able to safely and efficiently execute the work, and make sure that we can do that with as much local talent as possible as well. So, and maybe on that note, I might throw to you, Ashani. So are you able to tell us a little bit about who we engaged in the study and what the key themes were?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Samara. I think a really good synopsis of the study so far, so we'll just keep adding to it and hopefully not be too repetitive. But given that this was a preliminary study, it was really important for us to try and get as much consultation as possible, to try and gauge who was interested in contributing, but also to know that those that were key stakeholders in this entire journey and the opportunity in decommissioning should be engaged right from the beginning. So we did do some very diverse consultations, and so the key stakeholders that were involved range from oil and gas title holders and service providers through to public sector regulatory bodies and key industry groups, and this included research organisations or institutes, training institutes, even unions as well. And we also consulted international experts, because the decommissioning space certainly is not a new space, particularly in more mature geographical regions, and the opportunity for Australia to capitalise on that learning and make sure that we're bringing the best of international learning and expertise, but also really understanding the nuances and the needs of our local landscapes is really critical. So those were the key stakeholders that we engaged. I would like to say that absolutely everybody that we consulted with or reached out to was very positive and transparent and committed to engaging with us, and that's a big shout out to the industry and all the stakeholders engaged in the industry, because the wider ecosystem that we engaged through this process were very curious and keen to contribute to understanding how Australia can actually transform this agenda further, and I think that's a really good sign. So we do have invested stakeholders, and we've got everybody committed to working towards the same outcomes, knowing what the challenges are ahead of us, but the amazing opportunities ahead for us as well. Just to give you a little bit of an idea of the types of things that we covered in the study, it was conducted over a fairly short period of time, only 2 months or so. So we did quite a lot of work in that space. And again, a shout out to all the stakeholders who were willing to engage with us during that very short period of time. But it was a small and mighty effort during that time. We started by really trying to understand the oil and gas landscape across Australia, understand what the plethora of work look like that's coming up or has already started, and doing a really good desktop literature review, engaging our understanding of what's happening internationally in mature markets as well as not so mature markets that we could learn from. And then we did lots of consultation through the process. We engaged in 24 one-on-one consultations with key stakeholders through the different groups that I mentioned before. We ran 3 focus groups, and we had really good participation in those focus groups with different service providers coming together, different title holders coming together, and different industry bodies coming together to engage with each other and to start talking about this important topic. We also launched a survey, and in that survey we asked a lot of questions through an online format, and there was some mandatory components as well as some that, depending on the participant, they could skip, just to ensure that we got some participation. But overall, we were overwhelmingly happy with the response. We had 46 different stakeholders responding to that as well. So we've had quite a rich data set that has contributed to this study, which is being published today.
Very good. While you've got the microphone, just a follow-up question. Where are the big disruptions through all of this, Kristy? Which parts of the industry will see the biggest change, and where will we need to focus more on the uplift of capabilities?
Yeah, no worries. So as I answer that question, I might just add, and following on from Mr. Dawson's wonderful introduction before, that I think the commitment from the sector to learn and prepare is really, really strong. And that is really important as the positive message that we take forward from this, because there is a willingness for everyone to share and contribute and connect and collaborate. What that looks like, I think, will play out in the months to come. But I think that willingness is really important for us to consider. In terms of the key findings, Francis, that we gathered from this, we know that decommissioning is fairly. It's a work in progress, or it's starting to emerge in the Australian landscape. So whilst we've got a wonderful oil and gas industry that are mature and they know what they're doing and have been for a very long time, and there's a very engaged workforce within the industry, having the capability to do decommissioning activities and the nuances of that, particularly when we look at the health and safety considerations, almost the deconstruction considerations, the environmental management side of that, the recycling and waste management, with which Minister Dawson talked about earlier, those aspects are less mature or less presented in today's world for us to actively engage in within oil and gas. So as Samara mentioned before, decommissioning in Australia is very much at a nascent stage right now. And it will continue to mature over the next 10 years and beyond that. I think that over the next 5 to 10 years, there will be short bursts of activity driven by the end of life coming up with some platforms or some pipelines more than others, and that will drive that. So the level of preparedness that Australia has at the moment to actually manage the plethora of work to come is still very much a challenge for us, and something that we need to propel ourselves forward with is having a true picture of what that volume of work looks like, so that we can build the capabilities to deal with that. In terms of the sector, we do already have lots of transferable skills within the sector that can be leveraged in oil and gas, from the oil and gas industry or other adjacent industries that can support decommissioning. I think off the top of my head, the most important ones are the project management side, particularly when we're looking at things like cost planning or financial planning to enable decommissioning activity to be sustained over time, the environmental management side that we talked about before, some of the technical specialist skills that are required for decommissioning activity, particularly when it comes to pipelines and platforms and that plug and abandonment work. So there are certain parts of the workforce that we need more of a volume of than others. I think we've got some good expertise already locally that we can leverage, and if I can shout out some of the local projects, particularly Chevron and the work that's been done with Barrow Island, I think that there's some really great capabilities and expertise that we can leverage locally. But how do we grow that? How do we make the most of our international connections? How do we understand what the true pipeline of work is and work with all of that to enable to plan better for the future?
Very good, thank you. Kristy, do you want to talk a little bit about what it means in terms of the demand for specific skills and implications from the broader energy resources space as well? Because obviously this is not happening in isolation.
Yeah, that's
We've got
right.
all the other industries coming along as well. So if you would please.
Great. Thanks, Francis. And Ashani's done a wonderful job in terms of highlighting some of those key capabilities that we're anticipating will be in peak demand. Off the back of the survey that we did, and 48 responses was amazing, we were able to do a bit of granular analysis in terms of the different stakeholder groups, their perceptions in relation to the importance of the different capabilities we were considering, the current and future desired strength of those capabilities, and also a scarcity factor, so that we've got at least a starting point in terms of understanding the challenge that's in front of us. I think one of the skills that came through as most important is really in relation to decommissioning, program planning and reporting skills. So again, it's a capability that exists within our current workforce, but in terms of applying that specific decommissioning industry lens is actually where we're going to see that demand for capability uplift required. Some of the other key skills, demand for technical skills, again with that decommissioning lens, specifically things around kind of topside substructure, subsea preparation and removal. So there's really just that extra layer of complexity and industry understanding that needs to be applied to kind of existing skill sets. Regulatory compliance is going to be a really interesting one, and having the capability to be able to effectively manage all of the different regulations and expectations across the whole decommissioning life cycle. So that would definitely be an area of increased capability need. We've already touched on recycling and waste management. I'm so excited to hear around the hub, potential hubs in terms of location for decommissioning, but certainly looking at recycling and waste management. Health and safety is another one that we've got a plethora of. We've got strong capability with that within the state, but again, applying that decommissioning lens will be really important. And one that came up quite heavily was also around just the stakeholder management and consultation skills that will be required, not only across the stakeholders that we were involved in, but once you start getting into engaging with communities as well, and being able to kind of do that in-place consultation and effective management of those key relationships. So I think there's lots of opportunity, lots of different stakeholders are at different stages in terms of their capability journey. So we do know that service providers are probably in that space that need the greatest level of uplift in terms of the expected capability set they need to have, but certainly an exciting space to be in. So I have another question for you, Ashani. Keen to hear a little bit more about the international stakeholders that you were able to engage in and just understand some of those lessons that you're able to learn from the different jurisdictions and some of the leading practice that we might be able to leverage from a WA perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we all know, the international regions, particularly in the North Sea, are quite mature in the decommissioning space. So there's quite a lot that we can learn from them. And I think that their openness and their willingness to share information with us, not just in this study, but the relationships that you all within the industry already have, are certainly things that we need to leverage well in our mission around decommissioning. But there's some really interesting things that came out in the study that is worth highlighting. Ultimately, I think one of the key strengths of learning from the North Sea is that they have a lot of maturity and enhanced forecasting around the accuracy of decommissioning activities that have occurred in the past and are to come. And that level of understanding and forecasting is absolutely critical in order to help them to prepare their infrastructure, their workforce, and sharing of common challenges and activities across that region. So there's a big opportunity for us or a big hint for us to make sure that we do that successfully in our landscape as well. In 2018, the North Sea Transmission Authority, or NSTA, implemented a supply chain action plan, which is often used in the acronym of SCAPS. And this was created to enable title holders within that particular region of the North Sea to openly collaborate and share insights to us within each other around the projects that they were working on. So that's transparency was really important in facilitating learning, but also for the NSTA to be a key agency or body that was able to share insights around what activities were coming, what cost fluctuations were associated with that, where the gaps were in the supply chain, where the opportunities for learning were, etc. So I think the biggest opportunity for us in Australia is to make sure that we learn from what the North Sea has done in particular and apply some of those key critical planning activities in our approach as well. A challenge for us is going to be that given the geographical positioning of Australia, we've got lots happening in the Northwest Shelf in Western Australia, a lot happening in the Bass Strait in Victoria, and then lots of onshore work as well happening in plug and abandonment across the country. Because of our geographical positioning, it's so much more challenging for us to try and concentrate our efforts because they're happening all over the country. And so that's a challenge that the North Sea hasn't necessarily have to face, but still that planning opportunity is really ripe for us to take advantage of. Some of the other really interesting things that we learnt from our international stakeholders are, for example, Norway, Turkey and Denmark have scrap yards in place that allow decommissioning infrastructure to be brought onshore and then be decommissioned. And as Minister Dawson mentioned before, through the hub study, which was done in almost a similar time to the Deloitte skills study, we can see that there's massive opportunities there for us to create those demolition yards or that infrastructure for Australian activity to be managed well as well. So lots of learning there to be taken from other regions. Norway also is in the process of creating a mandatory workforce supply almost activity or information to be made publicly available. And I think this is a fantastic initiative because it supports the opportunity for visibility of where the workforce lies and where the gaps and the challenges are within Norway, but also it facilitates greater career pathways within that region and also prevents some of the shortages that we are inevitably going to see in Australia as well. So another great opportunity for us to leverage from that. And the last thing that we learnt from our study that I'll leave you with is in Norway, they recycled approximately 98% of the steel from their decommissioning activity, their offshore decommissioning activity, to build structures that are related to offshore wind and wind turbines, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And again, a really great opportunity for us, particularly as we know that over the next decade and the decades to come, we've got adjacent industries, including offshore wind, that are going to be happening in parallel to decommissioning activity here.
Excellent, thank you. So a lot to think about in there. Samara, anything you'd like to add to the descriptions and the narrative that these two ladies have provided?
I think everyone's done a wonderful job at covering everything, including Minister Dawson. Like you said, we almost didn't need to come up and tell you much more about the study, but maybe just to touch on a little bit more the global engagement that CODA has, and we've been really lucky to leverage both our own network and Deloitte's network as well of global connections and just how important that is in the decommissioning industry. So since we were established, we've been very fortunate to build connections globally, and we talk a lot to other jurisdictions because we're very conscious that decommissioning is not a new industry for many countries. A lot of countries and jurisdictions have been doing it for decades now. So, and like Ashani said, everyone has such an openness and willingness to share. So we've been very lucky in that respect, and we recognised that early on. So a few years ago, we actually did do a study, a global review of lessons learned and best practices, and that looked around the world at what other jurisdictions were doing as well, and it formulated in a report and also a register of lessons learned and best practices for the decommissioning industry. Now, we were very conscious that some things might not be applicable in Australia because we do have some unique characteristics to our operating environment. And then one of the other things as well, you know, we get to hear a lot of lessons learned, and for a while there I was kind of, what are we doing for the companies in these other countries, because we learn so much from them, but what can we give back? So more recently, and Francis, you'll probably be able to add to this, but we talk and engage extensively around what the market opportunities are in Australia, because there's very much an interest from overseas companies to come to Australia and to be involved in the market. So that's something that we do a lot of as well. And I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that, Francis, because you really lead that.
Yeah, it's interesting that the key finding, if you like, the first finding from the work that Deloitte did for us was essentially that we need to showcase the work that's coming up. We need to be able to show people what's happening next and when. And coincidentally, but it's never always coincidentally, but in parallel with us wrapping up this report, we commissioned another piece of work which we hope to have finished in about the next six weeks or so. And that's, we have engaged a company to use a natural language artificial intelligence tool to scrape all of the environmental plans that have been produced here that NOPSEMA are custodians of, rather. So these are public-facing documents. Each one of them is 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 pages long. Very, very, very detailed, very dense documents. And you could go, there's 200 of them, so good luck reading all of them as a human. But what we've done now, we've built this platform, which, as I say, will hopefully go live in the next few weeks. It will then be a live place where you can go to see what is the inventory of everything that's in the water, where is it who owns it, what's its timing around decommissioning, what's its timing around end of life and so forth. So that will be available. It'll be searchable, filterable, interrogatable, and it will, I actually believe now, having spoken to the NSTA guys who've run their platform for the last few years, and theirs is a very manual one, I actually think ours will be best in class anywhere in the world in terms of the insights that we'll be able to provide for just how much work is coming up here and when. It won't answer everybody's questions all the time, but it will answer an awful lot of questions very quickly for an awful lot of people. That will be available on our website in the next few weeks, so watch this space on that one. And around the rest of it, I mean, we've, as you say, Samara, we've been so fortunate that we've had engagement opportunities with service companies, with regulators, with our sister organisation, Decommissioning in the UK, with some of the big research hubs as well around the world, in terms of just openly sharing information. This has been an amazing industry for me to get involved with over the last few years, just to see that it's not a competitive space for a lot of people. Everybody wants to share. Everybody wants everybody to do as best as possible in executing this work. It's not just Australia. It's not just Western Australia. It's not the whole of Australia. It's not Australasia, it's not Asia Pacific, although there is an immense amount of work through Asia Pacific. It's not just the North Sea or Gulf of Mexico, it's South America as well. This is a global industry where everybody is hitting the workload at the same time. And we've all got this opportunity to work and learn and live the dream, if you like, going forwards in terms of the next 15, 20, 30 years. So doing all this sort of work and engaging with everybody is just so critical as we move into this. So, yeah, no, thank you very much for letting me have a chip in on that one. We're very conscious of time here. We've got about 5 minutes, and we need really to give anybody in the audience an opportunity to take any questions. But I'll just come back to you, Kristy, if that's okay. Key recommendations in terms of just what next around these skill challenges, and then we'll give maybe 3 or 4 minutes for people to ask any questions if they have any. Thank you.
No worries. Thanks, Francis. So there were 11 key recommendations that we suggested to CODA in terms of advancing the decommissioning skills. I'm so pleased to hear that number 1 is off and running, Francis, in terms of that consolidated view of upcoming decommissioning activity, and then the link that will be able to provide in terms of supporting a much more detailed analysis and strategic workforce plan in relation to supply and demand of critical skills, and therefore being much more deliberate in terms of how we solve those issues. I think also, can't hold a piece of paper, also the very collaborative approach that's needed in terms of solving this particular challenge. So as we've highlighted, we're going to draw upon skills from across different industries, different geographies. So what's that opportunity for bringing together the education sector, the employers, the regulated government to be able to formulate a really coordinated approach in response to the skills challenge in front of us. Other key opportunities, one that we spoke about was around reimagining and rebranding decommissioning to actually make it a really attractive and compelling industry for our workforce to want to work in. So moving away from kind of, perceptions around it being kind of dirty, but to being that real anchor to the impact that we're able to have on the communities as well as the environment. And the other one, I think, which again, like your example from number 1, Francis, is just that first step, but how are we actually being much more expansive in thinking about the actual design of the work that needs to happen? So not necessarily relying wholeheartedly on human skills to be able to deliver the work, but how could we be using technology to reduce reliance on human capability, but also deliberately design how those humans and technology can deliver together. So.
Wonderful, thank you. Now, I know we had a little bit more scripted chat here, but I'm really conscious that we might have a couple of questions from the floor. So, yes, gentleman at the back. Now, give me a second. I'll walk around with the microphone so we can hear your question.
My name's Rick Newland. I'm the Australian representative for Bibby Marine Limited, based in Liverpool and in the world. I think CODA are doing a fabulous job. I loved your report, but you've probably missed a bit of the lower end, the work end, around the bridge and on the bridge. Where are our Australian skippers, engineers and ratings coming from? You mentioned the North Sea. Well, they employ foreign labour in every aspect of their vessel management. We're not going to. Who's going to assist in providing Australian officers, engineers, ratings, cooks and caterers. Our company will be coming to Australia. We're looking at, obviously, decommissioning. We're looking at wind. We're looking at carbon capture. If you put them all together, they all want the same thing. It's all maritime. You mentioned all the top end, the smarts. But what about the work base? Where are they coming from? I don't think, and I'm reporting to my senior people that the government are going to allow offshore cheap labour to take the position wherever it is, decommissioning, wind or whatever.
Yeah.
I'd love to know your response to that.
Yeah, I'll just chip in, I guess, from that cross-industry response. So I'm very fortunate in that I get to work across kind of mining, oil and gas, kind of a lot of our kind of key employers across West Australia. And there's a huge appetite in relation to lots of the different parties coming together to actually solve that, not only for, as you call out, those the large technical skills, but also how are we going to solve the total workforce demand for all of these industries coming in at the same time. I think, do I have an answer right now? Not yet, but there is actually appetite and a want and a need for all of those different parties to come together to say, well, how are we going to front into the skills challenge that we have in front of us? We have defence industries that's coming in, mining's an existing requirement, decommissioning is going to come on top of that. So there's that absolute drive and acknowledgement of the challenge that's in front of us and the want to come together to be able to look at that together. So I don't know if you want to add anything, Ashani, or...
Yeah, sorry, is it Eric? Rick, thank you so much for your question. I mean, I think it highlights one of the key things from our report that comes out, which is that the skills shortage and the workforce shortage is prevalent, not just for decommissioning, because it's a fairly new space here, but within the industry at large, which is what Kristy was alluding to. And that's what requires the collaborative approach from industry, from government, from tertiary institutions, etc., to come and solve this together. So I think Minister Dawson mentioned the LNG Jobs and Skills Task Force earlier. I think that will be a primary and important factor in how we solve for this, because you're right, we've spoken a lot about how we can leverage from other regions, but ultimately we need to grow our own, and we know that growing our own is going to help us to maintain those career pathways, not just for decommissioning, but across the adjacent industries as well. So a massive area of focus. We know that skill shortages in Australia across all industries are a challenge, but coming together and collaborating around how to address this and helping to develop those skills right from school children's ages to attract people to come into these industries is really critical.
Thank you, ladies, and thank you for that question. Probably one more question. Yes, Elizabeth.
Hi, Elizabeth McAlpine from the UK, Decommissioning. You talk about rebanding and how you're going to promote decommissioning. As a decommissioning engineer myself, it's about how exciting decommissioning is, and those of us who work in it are very passionate about it. Every day is a different day, and that's your big selling point, because there's so many different aspects of decommissioning to facilitate many different mindsets, and it's getting people who have that mindset, neurodiverse or whatever, that can really see that overall picture and bring things together. And I think that's one of the creative parts of decommissioning. And you don't really have a decommissioning engineer, although I said that initially, because we tend to do, as I think you said earlier, projects come and go, and they're so abstract and whatever. So if you're lucky, you get 2-3 decommissioning projects, one after the other. But most engineers are just engineers, and they will find themselves dipping in and out of decommissioning projects. So it's something you learn, and it's something that grows through both commissioning, decommissioning, and other aspects. So so you need to kind of look at it holistically as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Very much agree. Thanks for that.
Lovely. Look, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Kristy, Samara and Ashani, for your contributions there. Thank you so much also for actually delivering the work. The document is available from our website. As mentioned, we have a small number of copies available on the stand behind you there. I think maybe, I'm looking at my colleagues there, and if they've not all already gone. We have a small number back there. But look, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us for this session. We're super excited to get this report out and just move into whatever is next. Thank you.